Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Keysa Amaro. She is a certified integrative nutrition coach and a registered yoga teacher. Keysa also hosts a podcast called Lose Your Cravings. So this is my brief introduction of you that I'm reading here, Keysa. But the full bio will be at the end of this video. But one of the questions that I love asking all my guests for the get-go for some reason is, who are you in your own words? How to describe who you are in this very moment?
Oh man, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I'm a health coach. I'm a mother. I'm a surfer. I'm a wife. I like to show up, like, especially right now in this moment of life, I like to show up in service. That's what I work on every day, is showing up in service in one way, shape, or another, whether that be to my family, whether that be to my clients that I work with, teaching yoga, or whether that be to myself, right? Because we have to serve ourselves as well.
Yes, that's a beautiful way of seeing life, kind of interacting with life. Service. I remember, I always quote this here. Somebody, I think it was a Swami, said, when I close my eyes, I am at peace. When I open my eyes, I am at service. Basically, he said, how can I help? So there's something about that it resonates with everyone for some reason again. And I usually ask the question, do you believe that this is sort of an innate human longing to help one another? And does it have to do with the truth per se that we are all connected, that everything is connected, and that's why we look to help one another?
I do. And now I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know if it's just me, but I know for me, I have this desire to serve, this desire to help. I get joy out of helping people and seeing them grow, improve, have aha moments. I also used to be a teacher, so I was an elementary teacher, so that I really enjoyed that service. And it does help us connect to other people and understand other people, especially when we have that open-mindedness. And I always like to come to, especially working with clients now, that's what I'm doing, coming to either a client session or a yoga class with just that open-mindedness of, I don't know where they've come from. I don't know their background necessarily. It could be somebody new showing up to a yoga class, and I don't really know anything about them, and just having that open-mindedness that, they've had their own life experiences that have brought them to this class. And having kind of like that compassion for that person, in not knowing and knowing that there's like a connection there too, right? Like we all have had our own life experiences that have brought us to, this present moment, and they've all kind of led us, and those life experiences have led us to where we are now.
Yeah. I love the idea of openness, being curious, Keysa. There's something about that. But I usually meet people as friends, like these, old friends. We just forgotten that we're old friends. There's something, well, that's my approach for the perspective that I have, that everything's not just connected, but it's one. There's this substance, this essence that connects everything, and not just in the sense of connecting, of bringing together, but everything there is, it's held by this substance, which is, I call it consciousness, but that has to do with my own spiritual understandings and studies. So, in speaking of spirituality, since I mentioned now, what is your idea of spirituality? What is to be spiritual per se?
To be spiritual would, I think, be about connection. Connecting to something greater than you, whether that be through a church, that could be spirituality, whether it be through nature, whether it be through conversations, meditation, just finding that connection with something bigger than you, and knowing that like life is bigger than us, right? It's bigger than us.
Yeah.
Um, and that and we can't necessarily control everything. It comes back to that control. Like we as humans want to control things, but having that spirituality and that connection in whatever form, is right for you helps us understand that we don't have control over everything, right? Like, and
Yes.
how do we manage that, and how do we make peace with that? I think having some sort of connection helps us with that.
Yes, I love that. What's not to love about that?
Yeah.
And you see, I have to go back to what you said. That I mentioned this off record, but this really, really caught my attention because it has to do with my understandings of life itself, how it operates. You said, I can stay present with discomfort and not want to change anything. I mean, I'm just speaking for you here for a moment for what I read, but in your own words, how do you live this understanding of being uncomfortable and not wanting to change anything? I mean, I just love that.
It's a work in progress. First of all, it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
And sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. But where this work, and I focus on emotional eating, and I work with my clients on emotional eating and overeating. And so it really comes back to emotional intelligence. So for me, in my personal experience, I was never taught how to process and allow emotions in a way that served me, right? I was taught that you shouldn't cry, especially in front of other people.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be frustrated. You shouldn't be angry. You shouldn't be mad. You can be happy. That's fine, right? We can have these like, quote unquote, good emotions and
Yes.
acceptable, like socially acceptable emotions. And so a lot of us, if we are raised that way, we aren't necessarily raised in a way to process and allow our emotions. So we have these emotions like stress, frustration, agitation, and we internalize them. We don't want to feel them. And so we look to outside sources to cover them up. And so for most of the clients, and for me in my own personal experience, I turn to food, right? Because food is delicious, and,
Yeah.
especially the unhealthier foods like sugary foods, processed carby foods. Like those are the ones that give us this dopamine hit, and we forget about our stress, we forget about our frustration, we forget about these negative emotions that we are suppressing. But unfortunately, it's only fleeting, right? It's just this temporary band-aid that we're putting on a wound that we need to actually go in. I like to think that like go in and like clean out the wound and let it heal from the inside out versus just putting a band-aid over it. And maybe there's an infection in there. And so when we learn that all emotions are a part of life, right? There's no bad emotion necessarily. There's no emotion we shouldn't be feeling or shouldn't be experiencing.
Right.
And learning to allow and process those emotions, especially the stress, the frustration, the agitation, the sadness, the fear, anger. Learning to process those in a way that serves you and without food.
Yes, that's definitely the case for most of us. And I just interviewed somebody recently about exactly that. I think it was emotional eating, but I think we talked about this. And then I asked her about my habits because I eat the same thing twice a day, and I eat the same things. I have this habit. So because it serves me, as you said, it makes my body feel good. And then she said it had to do with comfort. She said you might be trying to comfort yourself, eating. So how do you see that by eating the same food? Is that a way also of comforting ourselves? Because then I started questioning, what I ate, although it feels good, but
Right.
and they're healthy too. They're not unhealthy foods.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably get a little more curious about like what is the food? What are you feeling before you eat the food? right?
Yeah.
Because it's a response. Like the food is a response, whether it's emotional hunger or physical hunger. So maybe you're physically hungry
Yeah.
when you
Oh,
eat the
yeah.
food, right? We should be all be eating when we're physically hungry.
Yes.
Maybe like I would get curious about like, what am I feeling right before I eat this food? Am I stressed? Am I procrastinating? I used to eat out of procrastination all the time,
Ah. Oh.
right? Like
Yeah.
that's a sneaky that's a sneaky one right there, because like we don't think of that necessarily as a negative emotion, but I'm just
Right.
procrastinating. Like what I need to do is focus on this task, and I just want to go get a snack. So I would get curious, like why am I wanting this food right now?
Mm.
Um, and two, like maybe it serves you, right? Is it like, what is the effect of eating this food? Do I get joy out of eating this food? Is it, is it part of like a ritual, right? And does it like, if I'm like, does it affect my digestion? Like, do I get digestive issues from it? No. Okay, that's fine. Do I feel bloated from it? No. Okay, that's fine. Right? Do I feel like I'm overeating and stuffing myself? No.
Mm.
Okay, that's fine. Right? And is it affecting me like mentally? Like some foods can, affect us mentally. So I would just get curious about why am I choosing to eat this food? And is it serving me? Like what are the consequences? It could be positive consequences of eating this food, or it could be negative.
Ah.
And then also too, if you like you mentioned eating the same food every day, sometimes it could become habitual,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
We don't necessarily know why. We just eat the same food every day, and it's a habit. And that's fine. If you want to break the habit, you can break the habit. And once again, it goes back to, is this serving me? What are the consequences?
Mm. I love the way you actually talk about yoga too, how we can apply. You said we can take yoga from the mat to our lives, and those principles can be applied in every way. And I love what you said too. Yoga is not a practice. It's a practice, not a performance. That
Mm,
was a big one too. I remember trying a yoga class and kind of not being interested because I saw that all the competition, women competing with one another, trying to, who'd perform better at certain poses.
mm,
And that really was not really the reason I was there. It was more the spiritual reason. And then that kind of led me not to the path of yoga.
mm.
But this is a misconception, and I know I changed the topic a little bit here, but that's something that you also do. So talk to me about yoga and how to connect with the practice in a healthy way.
Yeah, and it's such a great like I love that you shared that example and that experience that you had, because there's so many different yoga classes out there. There's
Yeah.
so many varieties, and there are studios out there that are like, let's get a workout in. And then there's studios out there that are like, let's look at this, mind body connection, and let's look at all 8 limbs of yoga, not just the asana,
Yes.
or the
Yes.
poses. And so if you're looking for a yoga or yoga practice, I would say try multiple studios,
Mm.
right? Try multiple studios and see which one fits you best, because one studio is different from the other. And in my experience, and what I would like to share with people, is that yoga is not just about the poses. It's not just about looking good. Um, I know sometimes we can see on Instagram, there's just, it's like bendy people, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of people get
Yes.
turned off because they think that
Yes.
they have to be in these like really flexible, bendy poses, when that's not
I.
what it is at all. Like if you can do that, that's awesome, right? But that's not what yoga is about. It's not just that. It's about your breath awareness,
Mm.
right? It's
Yeah.
about the way you live your life. It's about meditation, working on meditation, that mind body connection. Um, and so looking for a yoga class, I'd highly recommend looking for one that does some sort of breath work in the practice, that allows you to be with yourself and be just how you are in that moment. Right? That doesn't pressure you to go deeper into postures, but just allows your body that maybe they have different ways of doing each posture, of like different, you could call it like progressions, right? And there's no one right way or no one wrong way to do this posture. And there's no ending, right? There's no ending like we're trying to get to. I think that's also important to understand with yoga. And I like to think about like when I'm in a class with other people, I have like this little, like you have your mat and I kind of make a little border with my mat, and that's where my focus is. My focus is not on, especially all of us who are like competitive and like to compare ourselves to others.
Yeah.
That's not what yoga is about. We're there for ourselves. And so keeping that focus on ourselves versus comparing ourselves to other people.
Yes. So that's interesting that you mentioned, so yoga, there's no ending, there's no destination, right? With when it comes to yoga. But is there a goal? Do you actually suggest your students to your clients to have a goal when it comes to the classes?
I would think of it more as like an intention. Like, what is your intention for this class? Is it to focus on your breath? Because we're gonna get distracted. Like, this is just the human mind. We get distracted. We think about what we need to do, what happened earlier today, our to-do list. And so my intention might be like, okay, every time I see my mind wandering, I'm just going to refocus on my breath, or I'm going to refocus to the posture we're in. Right? That might be my intention. And I would, each to their own, right? I'm not going to tell you how to do your yoga practice. Of course not. As far as like a goal, like when I think of a goal, like I'm like, oh, okay, I want to get deeper into my forward fold, right? And that's fine, right? You can get deep, like you can want to work on your forward fold and, extending those hamstrings, but having compassion with yourself and not forcing it, right? And we can have a goal, and I would say, don't worry about the time limit. Like, yes, I want to increase flexibility in my hamstrings, and I want to, get a little bit better in my forward fold, but I don't need to do it by a certain time. I don't need to force it to happen. And some days when I go into yoga and practice, my forward fold might not be as deep as other days that I go in, and that's okay. Right. So having that compassion and understanding for yourself and just allowing it to happen versus forcing it to happen.
Right. And there's an episode. Oh, yeah, I did mention the podcast. So you host a podcast titled Lose Your Cravings, and you have recorded some episodes and you sent it to me, 3 of them, one of which is called How Yoga Helped Me Heal My Emotional Eating. And there you talk about listening to the body versus forcing it to change. So we just made this, this message already has been delivered here. Perhaps we could go into a little bit more into listening to the body. Wow, that's a big one, because I tend to go with the flow too and not trying to control those processes as well. Like if the body wants something sweet because of the period, that the days before, the week before, then I just do that because I know it's wanting that for a reason. So I kind of give what it wants. Is that something that you suggest as well, or am I giving the wrong message here?
That's totally fine. I had some ice cream, not last night, but the night before.
Good.
No, it's totally fine. And I think as far as like listening to our body, I think in our modern day, we have so many distractions. We have so many things that can distract us from what is going on inside of us. Whether that be physically going on inside of us, emotionally, mentally, we have so many distractions. And so we're not necessarily in tune with our body. And so one of the first things I work on with clients is differentiating between emotional hunger and physical hunger. Because oftentimes we just want food and we think it's hunger. We think it's all the same. Like I need like this ice cream, right? It's like I just need it's hunger, right? And so
Uh,
how do I listen to my body and notice like what are my hunger cues? How do I know if I'm physically hungry? What does that look like? What
yeah.
does that feel like? And how do I start recognizing that in my body? And how do I know if it's emotional hunger? So is it showing up like in my throat? Is it showing up in my chest? Is it showing up in my shoulders? Right. And so there's this difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger. And that's just creating that connection and awareness with your body.
Mm,
And so just noticing, kind of like you mentioned before, you're like, you have like eat those same things every day. It's like, before I eat this, okay, let me connect with my body. Let me see, why do I want this food?
yeah.
Am I physically hungry? Or is there an emotional reason why I want this? And that helps us really recognize when am I truly physically hungry, and when is this emotional hunger and emotional eating showing up for me? And then we can start to work on, and sometimes it's like, you know what, you're not eating enough food, right? So many
Mm,
women come to me and they're
mm,
just not eating enough. Or it's, like, oh, I notice that I get really hungry like right when I get home from work and I just want chips. Okay, that's not, like when we break it down,
yeah.
like, are you physically hungry? And they realize like, no,
Yeah.
I just had a really long day. I was just go, go, go all day. And I just want something to help me relax and like de-stress. I'm like, okay, so that's what your body is craving. It's an emotional hunger. You want something to help you relax and de-stress. So how do we do that in a way that serves you?
Right.
Right? Instead of
Mm,
using the chips to do that, which, let's be honest, it's covering up, right? How can we do that in a deeper and more meaningful way where we're actually addressing the root cause? We're actually
yes.
getting to like help you de-stress.
Yes. I love that message. You keep saying that again. It's serving that, do something, eat something that will serve you, your body, mind, and
Mm-hmm.
spirit. Of course, everything is connected.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I mentioned about my own experience of eating the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm hungry, yes, I fast too. So I eat, I think 17 hours, 18, 17 hours
Mm-hmm.
without eating. And then I'm really hungry when I'm about to eat. And then it's usually vegetarian foods. That's the foods that I feel like serves the body mind
Mm-hmm.
much better than eating eggs or fish. I don't eat meat that much, but there's something about eating vegetarian foods that makes me feel better. The body, mind
Mm-hmm.
feel better, more connected.
Yeah.
Do you feel that too? Do you suggest your clients to eat more, engage on plant-based diet, or you don't call it diet?
I don't necessarily call it a diet. I mean, it is a diet, right? A diet is
Yeah,
like essentially is like the food you eat,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so looking at the food you eat, this goes back to connection with body. What foods feel good in your body?
yeah,
Like what foods feel good? And I like a lot of vegetables are going to feel good in your body, right? Because it's feeding the good bacteria in your gut. Like if you want to go
yeah,
to gut health, like fiber and vegetables and fruit, they're feeding that good bacteria. Do I promote eating vegetables? Yes.
you
Yes,
do.
100%. Um, I think I feel so much better when I eat more vegetables, but I don't necessarily prescribe a specific way of eating. It's more about
Yeah,
tuning into your body and eating what feels good in your body and noticing, right? Because sometimes we've like just gone through life of being on specific diets and we just do it
yeah,
because we're trying to lose weight or whatever. um and we don't notice like, oh, I actually don't feel good when I eat this
yeah,
food. And so it's kind of an experiment of, okay, trying different foods, what feels good in my body, and what serves me. And it looks different for everyone, but honestly, I haven't worked with anybody who was like, I won't eat a vegetable, it doesn't feel good in my body. So
yes,
there are
right.
some people where like certain vegetables do, like they're
Yeah,
like, ah, that bloats me a little bit. And so they might stay away from certain vegetables, but there's other ones that they can fill their plate with.
Right.
So yeah, I highly recommend having a nice serving of vegetables, having some sort of protein that's going to help satiate you, eating those healthy fats and, like those complex carbohydrates.
Yeah. I love them healthy fats, right?
Yes. Yes.
So your message is universal, though. Eating foods that serve you. That's very
Mm-hmm.
universal. I mean, that's the universal message, period. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not really tailored to some people because then, the way it serves us, that can be individualized. But
Mm-hmm.
it goes back to this fundamental message of service again, something that, that promotes growth and flourishing of the body mind. So what a beautiful message, Keysa. Thank you for that. That's very fresh. I know we
Thank
mentioned the
you.
word fresh earlier. Something else that you mentioned in one of your episodes is about belief systems. So they how influence us. So believing something, and then you gave some examples that I have here. You might believe that there are good foods and bad foods. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of the belief systems we might adopt. So, this is an interesting one. So, how would you rephrase this in a way, between broccoli and, let's say, in a bunch of French fries?
French fries, right? Our beliefs are just thoughts that we have thought over and over and over again so many times that we believe them to be true, right? Like,
Yes.
I for a long time believed ice cream was bad. Like, ice cream is bad, you shouldn't eat it. If you
Yeah.
eat it, you're bad. Like, you've done something bad. So this idea of a bad food, like partially why we want to get away from it is because if we eat the bad food, then we internalize that we are a bad person. We've done something bad. And then there's a lot of guilt and shame around that.
Right. Yeah.
And when we have guilt and shame, we tend to do self sabotaging behaviors, whether that's overeat more ice cream or more French fries, more bad
Yes.
food, over exercise to compensate, negative self talk. And so we want to get away from this idea of good food and bad food. And my view is food is neutral. All food is neutral. It's just calories and uh, put together
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that we put in
Yeah.
our body, right? Um, and
Yes.
so when we take away, and even too with the other extreme, like good food, like I used to think that oh, a salad is a good food. And so, and like, I'm not talking like salads I make today, but it was like lettuce and like lemon juice and maybe some carrots and tomatoes. Like that was a salad.
Yeah.
And not very filling at all, right? No protein, no fat. And so I like when I would eat those good foods, I was a good person. I was doing something good.
Mm,
And so I was kind of tying my worth to what I was eating. Um, and so when we let go of this idea of, good foods and bad foods, and that food is just neutral, it's just there.
yeah.
Then I let go of this idea that I shouldn't be eating ice cream. Because when I think, oh, I shouldn't be eating ice cream, guess what? I want the ice cream.
Yes.
We want what we can't
Yes.
have. Like, oh, that's off limits. I shouldn't have sugar, like no refined sugar whatsoever. I can't have it. It's bad for me. Then I'm like, oh, I want it. Like, I want all the refined sugar.
Yeah.
And so neutralizing this food, it's like the ice cream is not bad anymore. And guess what? I don't want it as much. Like I eat ice cream way less. Like I used to be obsessed with ice cream because I think it was one of those things I really loved, but it was also this bad food. I shouldn't be eating it. It's going to make me
Ah,
fat. It's, all the bad things, has, lots of sugar, lots of fat in it, has dairy in it, has all the things. Um, and so then I would restrict it, but then I would end up overeating it, right? I would sit
ah,
down with a pint of ice cream and eat a pint of ice cream. And now, after shifting my beliefs around this food and like it's neutral food, I eat it way less often. I crave it less often. And like we have it in the house and I don't even worry about it, right? Like I forget about it sometimes, right? Until I'm like,
Good.
ooh, I kind of want something sweet. What do we got?
Uh,
And so really neutralizing food, but also like if you're, I know there's probably people out there, but sugar is bad for you. Like refined sugar is bad for you. Like, okay, like I totally understand. And you can educate yourself about sugar and the effects it has on your body. And you can be conscious and aware of what you're eating and putting into your body. I don't eat very much added sugar. Like I'm definitely like on a daily
yeah.
basis, I don't eat very much, but it's because I'm choosing to not eat it because I know how it feels in my body. It goes back to that body connection of does this food serve me? When I eat a pint of ice cream, does that serve me? No. Like I can say hands down, no, I feel awful afterwards.
Yes, yes. So you
But
know.
does eating
Mm.
like a quarter cup of ice cream, like a scoop of ice cream serve me? Yes, every once in a while it does. It's totally fine. And I don't feel any guilt or shame around eating that food. So it goes back to like that connection with your body of how does this food feel when I actually
Right.
stop and listen and notice instead of being on autopilot. And I'm all about like educating yourself around food and nutrition and making those decisions for yourself.
Yes. Within the post, How to Improve Your Relationship with Food, you actually outline the signs that you have a negative relationship with food and signs that you have a good relationship with food. So I would love for you to talk to me for a moment about them so the audience knows the
Mhm.
difference. I have them here, but you don't
Mhm.
have to go through all of them, but some of them, the most important ones per se.
Yeah, well, just like we spoke about, like this idea of good food and bad food,
Yeah,
and
that's
and
one.
and two, just to kind of clarify, our relationship with food is how we think about food,
Mm,
and our thoughts create our feelings, which drive our actions. So you can think of like our relationship is like how do I think, how do I feel, and how do I act around food.
yes.
And so if we have this idea of good food and bad food, that is not necessarily creating a healthy relationship with food because we're going to restrict foods and then we're going to overeat foods or just eat them, right? And then we're going to feel guilty for eating the foods, whether it's a serving or 2 servings or 10 servings, right?
Aye.
And so yes, like that idea of good food and bad food. And having like guilt, when you feel
Oh yeah.
guilty for eating certain foods, that is showing that you have a poor relationship with food, right? Because food should not determine our worth, right? Just like our weight should not
Mm,
determine our worth. And so if you feel like you are a bad person because you're eating certain foods or you feel guilty or shame around eating certain foods, then we need to explore your relationship with food. And so what that would look like to have a healthy relationship with food is that like eating foods without feeling guilty or feeling shame around it. And that's the big thing when working with clients is they're not going to just stop emotional eating like a light switch, right? It doesn't happen that way. It's a learning process. And so one thing is like when you do overeat or when you are eating emotionally, how do you meet that? Right? Do I meet that with like negative self-talk, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that again. I'm work
mm,
like none of this is working. I'm such an awful person. Like those are thoughts that we have when we do this. And turning into that compassion and curiosity. I think compassion and curiosity is such an amazing thing, amazing tool that you can use and get like I like the curiosity of like, oh, I wonder why. I wonder why I overate this food. Right? Instead of getting mad and angry, we're not going to find answers there. We're going to find the answers in getting curious. Why? I wonder why I overate. Was I frustrated? Did I eat enough today? Have I drank enough water? Did I have a stressful day? Am I
yeah.
lonely? Like really getting curious about it. So yeah, that negative relationship with food, that sorry, the good food, bad food, feeling guilty around eating certain foods. And then also like this idea of the all or nothing mindset. That's another one, all or nothing, where we have to be perfect with our food. There's no reason why you need to be perfect with your food. We are human beings. We are not perfect, you know? Ask your friend, are you perfect? They're going to say no.
Yes.
We might see portrayals of perfection, you know, whether that be on TV, social media. We see these portrayals of perfection, but we are humans. We are not perfect. We are not meant to be perfect. And therefore your eating is not going to be perfect, right? We're not going to be like clean eating, and like even if you like choose to be vegetarian and like you eat an egg or some fish, that's fine, right? Like it's okay. We don't have to stick to these rigid rules. I call them food rules, and that's another one. If you follow
Oh,
food
yeah.
rules, like if you follow food rules, you
Mm.
have a negative relationship with food. And so letting and like food rules might be like, oh, I don't eat sugar, or I never eat dairy.
Yes.
I can only eat X amount of calories, or I have to follow these macros. Um, and so having those food rules, and now once again, can you have like these parameters? And yes, you can, but I would focus more on being mindful around eating,
Mm.
having that mind body connection around what you're eating, because that's going to be a better determinant, and that's more internal of, you know, like creating this amount of food that feels good in my body. Like instead of counting calories, like how much food feels good in my body, how much food is going to fuel me for my day and my needs, right? So many people come and they're like, they've been counting calories or macros, and it's a really hard transition to let go of that, because there's, I think also too, we don't trust ourselves around food, especially
Ah,
if you've been on some sort of diet in the past. We look to other people, other experts, to tell us what to eat, when to eat, how much to eat. And connecting with your body is really listening to how much food should I be eating? When
yeah.
should I be eating? You know, what type of food? And that's really hard for people to transition to that.
That's true.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
that is so true. What is your ideal client, Keysa? Do you have a profile for the people you
Yeah.
work with?
People I work with tend to be women who have been on many diets. They are like consistent dieters. They've done all the things. Many people who come to me, they're like, I've done all the things. I've done
Yeah.
like Weight Watchers, I've done keto, I've done paleo, I've low calorie, low fat,
Wow.
macros, cabbage soup diet.
Wow.
So they've done many diets, and nothing works for them. Like they'll lose some weight and then they'll gain it back. They'll be really good with their diet, and then something happens in life, whether it is a stressful situation,
Yeah.
life circumstances change, or they're just deprived, and then they eat the food that they were trying to stay away from. And so yeah, and a lot of it ties back to um, emotional eating and cravings.
Mm.
So yeah, a lot of women who have been on numerous diets, and they just can't find the thing that sticks, that works for them. And so I really help women manage their emotional eating without feeling deprived. And I think that's a big
Right.
thing, is like without feeling deprived and without having to follow these complicated meal plans that we often find in nutrition programs and diets, and whether it's like clean eating. Like I'm all about clean eating, right? But if you're like here, use this 14-day meal plan. And I've done it before. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this 14-day meal plan. And then there's like, they're all new recipes. I haven't made any of them. I'm like looking in the
Yes.
grocery store, where do I find this ingredient? Where do I find that ingredient? And so how do we create this? And like, yes, we want to maybe move to clean eating, but how do we do that in a sustainable way, in a way that you can do like kind of like bite size, right? Like, oh, I can do one
Yes.
recipe a week, right? I
Right.
can go look at one recipe, I can find the ingredients in the store, and I can make it.
Yeah. And your services, how can they find you? I know you gave me your Instagram. It's
Yes,
Keysa Amaro. Is that the best place to find you, Keysa?
that's the best place to find me.
Okay.
Keysa.Amaro. You can find, I have my podcast link is in my bio. So if you go to my bio, you'll find my podcast link. You can find it on pretty much any podcast app. Lose Your Cravings with Keysa Amaro.
Yes.
And then I also have a free gift, Break Free from Nighttime Eating. And so you can, it's a guide. It kind of shares like why we eat at night, like what are some reasons why we like just can't stop eating, like after dinner. We're like,
Yeah.
I just want something sweet, or I just keep snacking. And then I give you 3 strategies to help reduce that. So I have that there as well. And then any free workshops that I am doing, I will have in my bio as well.
Okay, so that's great to know.
Yeah.
And the bio can be found. I know I have your bio here, will be on the video format. I don't have the podcast, but I'll have the link of the podcast, of course, on the podcast notes too.
Okay.
And let's see. So we're almost at the end. I want to thank you again for your presence in the health and wellness business field world, right? Really.
Yeah. Yes.
So thank you so much for being one more guide, to lead people to experience that connection, body, mind, soul connection, and experience more joy. That's really what we are looking for, right? Peace and joy. So, and I do have another question for you, the ending question. But before that, Keysa, there's anything else that you left unsaid that we didn't discuss that I forgot to ask?
Oh man, that's a big question. I could talk. I could seriously talk all day. I will leave it. How about this? I will leave it at that.
Yeah,
If you listeners have questions or want to find out more about anything that we talked about, my podcast is the great place to kind of find out more. I have over 100. I think I'm at 142. So there's a lot of information out there. And I also do focus on body image too, because I think body image is a part of emotional eating too, because we, for some reason, don't like our body and we want to change it. And so I do have some episodes on emotional eating, and I have worked with some clients, I have some episodes on body image, and I have worked with some clients with body image. So that's another thing that I specialize in.
That's a big one too.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I have to ask you this question before we say goodbye for today. What is your idea of freedom? What is freedom to you?
Freedom is, I would say, knowing when to let go, when to surrender to circumstances in life, and allowing the circumstances to be. And that goes back to, like, can I be with this discomfort? Can I be with, because when we fight it, when we're like, oh, it shouldn't be this way, I don't want it to be this way, then that's where kind of like that discomfort, like we actually make it worse, the discomfort worse, right? When we're fighting against what is. So I think like knowing when to surrender and when to like let circumstances be. And circumstances are those things we can't change, we don't have control over in our lives, and knowing that we have control over our thoughts, but we don't have control over those circumstances. So we can choose thoughts that can bring us peace, that can bring us freedom.
Yes,
control.
that Right, beautiful. Well, beautifully said. I love your wisdom. I love your message, though. It's very spiritual, but it's within the more health and wellness.
Hmm.
But it's so spiritual, and of course,
Yeah.
I expect it because you're a yoga teacher, so that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
It
and I
brings
think
everything together. Yeah, it can.
for sure that yoga has helped kind of like bridge the two,
Right.
like the spiritual and the health.
Thank you so much, Keysa, for being
Well,
you.
thank you very much for allowing me to be on your show.
Thank you. So we'll be in touch again. I would love to, but for
Yeah,
now, yes, take good care of yourself. We'll be in touch
thank you.
again. Yeah,
You
thank you
too.
for your presence. Bye for now.
Bye.